Hello, hello, hello. It's Carl back with Newcastle Fans TV, and today I'm delighted to be joined by someone who's been through the terrible situation that we're currently going through at the moment. He obviously supports the team that we're playing on Saturday. Something I'm not looking forward to personally, but I'm delighted to introduce Max from Villa on tour. Max, how are we, mate?
I'm really good, mate. Happy to be on. Your intro sounded a little bit sad there. Not looking forward to the game on Saturday. I am, but yeah, thanks for having me on, mate. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. Myself and Max got in touch with each other and realised we actually live very close to each other. So it's a shame we can't do this in person, but hopefully in the future we can. Just a little bit about how you guys performed against Man City, mate. It was a decent performance, to be fair.
Yeah, it was, and I think Dean Smith has said in all his press conferences this season that whoever we play, we'll always give them a game. You know, Liverpool beat them 7-2, went to Stamford Bridge, got a decent point there. Old Trafford at the Etihad, we went there. Yes, we lost, but we give these sides a really good run for their money. I think we got a little bit lucky, like to not concede until we did in the 80th minute, and we rode our luck at times. But it was still a really, really good defensive performance, and we even looked good going forward as well. We sprung them on the counter attack a couple of times. It was just eventually our luck ran out and we conceded that first goal, which is a little bit controversial to say the least. But yeah, their quality shone through eventually. But yeah, still massive performance that I'm proud of.
Yeah, it was. I think how long is it? 19 days since you played a game. Is that right?
Yeah, since the New Year's Day it was, so nearly 3 weeks.
Yes, it's a massive coup for you. I mean, I did watch the game, and I hate saying this because being surrounded by Villa fans, there's always a little bit of a rivalry between me and the lads. So, but no, you pulled up trees this season. That's why we're obviously really worried about Saturday. I think every Newcastle fan will be worried about the game coming up on Saturday. What I wanted to talk about initially, mate, is you appointed Steve Bruce back in 2016, I think it was. He probably did okay for the first season and a half in terms of picking up the slack from Roberto Di Matteo, pushed on, got you into the playoff final. Then the negativity set in, and essentially bad tactics lost you promotion to the Premier League effectively. It looked like it just kind of went downhill from there. And then Dean Smith comes in and does a wonderful job. But just talk me through your kind of tenure under Steve Bruce, mate. How was it? Obviously, it seemed on the face of it very similar to us at the moment.
Yeah, I can see a lot of sort of similarities in what's going on in Newcastle at the moment. So we came in 2016. It was our first year in the Championship. Like you said, Di Matteo was at the helm, and we were like 10 games into the season, I think, and we just weren't performing. We were flirting relegation, and Di Matteo got the sack. And when Bruce came in, I think the majority of Villa fans were buzzing because he'd been there in the Championship, done it, got teams promoted countless times. So I was buzzing with the appointment of Steve Bruce. And I think throughout that season, he did the job. He got us from sort of mid-table nothingness. We came 13th in the first season, but that was fair enough. Like, we can cope with that. It was the second season under Bruce where we did really well. We came fourth, and we were really good that season. We had our patches of going through a little bit of rubbish form, but at the end of the day, we came fourth. And I think we could have gone for top two that season, but we came fourth, and we just lost out to Fulham in the final. And that summer where we lost that player final in 2018, the club was an absolute mess. Yeah. The owners went eventually, because I think it was Dr. Tony, who was the owner at the time. He just pretty much gambled the club, and we were so close to administration and things like that. There was talk about us not even being able to sack Steve Bruce because we didn't have the funds to pay him off and things like that. So the club was an absolute mess then. And it was our promotion season. Steve Bruce started that season. Again, like Di Matteo, got about 10 games in-ish, maybe a little bit more. And it was just dire football. Again, we were sort of on 15th in the Championship, and the squad that we had, Tammy Abraham up front, Jack Grealish, Tyrone Mings came in the January. We just had a really, really good squad, and that squad should be top of the league in the Championship without doubt. And just Bruce wasn't doing it. And his time came eventually. His tactics just weren't the one for the squad that we had, and eventually he got sacked, and it was the right decision with Dean Smith coming in eventually.
Yeah, so kicking on from there, you've promoted into the Premier League. You didn't, on the face of it, look too bad, to be honest. It seemed that maybe in the final phase of the games, you were lacking a little bit of fitness, not used to the pace of the Premier League, as it had been a while. What's changed this season, mate? Because you're completely different. You're not showing any respect to size. You're pulling out results left, right, and centre, and going toe to toe with the likes of Man City. Obviously, you've had that massive win against Liverpool as well. What's different this season?
I think when we first came up in the summer of 2019, we signed 12, 13 players. There was a lot of stick coming from fans of other clubs saying, look, they've spent 100+ million. I think it was 130 million in the end. Like Fulham did the year before, they're going to do a Fulham. Like they've just signed loads of players. There's no real strategy behind it. But yes, we signed a lot of players, Luis, Consa, all these players coming in that hadn't played together. They'd come from lots of different countries, players coming from Turkey, from the Spanish leagues, things like that, players that hadn't played in the Premier League before. And it just took a lot of time to gel, which is fair enough. And, you know, Dean Smith has done a fantastic job to keep us up last year because of the quality of players. It was Jack Grealish FC. We were genuinely just a one-man team. I think that's one of the main things that has changed this year. We are not a one-man team. We've invested in the summer just gone in getting players around him like Ross Barkley who are on that similar sort of level to Jack Grealish, so he can bounce on them and there's not as much pressure on him. I think we had a fantastic summer window. That's one of the main reasons why we're doing so well this year. We signed 5 players, I think it was. And I think it's fairly rare for every single player in a transfer window to come off. Every single one of our signings has come off. I think Martinez in goal has been one of the signings of the whole Premier League. He's been unreal, kept us in a lot of games this year. Matty Cash at right back, Traore, Ollie Watkins, Ross Barkley, like I said earlier, they've all been fantastic and they've all worked really, really well. I just think the quality of the side has just gone up that notch and the players have just been able to gel. Like Douglas Luiz, I think, is a good example. Last year, he took a lot of time to sort of settle, and since Project Restart at the end of last season, he's been fantastic. So I just think, you know, the players have learning how to play under Dean Smith, learning how to play with each other. And it's just, you know, the players gelling and it's working this season because we've been really, really good.
Yeah. Anything you worried about from Newcastle at all this weekend?
I mean, I've watched the game against Sheffield United, and look, if you're settling for a point, which Newcastle looked like they were against Sheffield United, like there's no ambition there. And I've watched a couple of their games, and I think they're probably the worst side I've watched this year. So Saint-Maximin is there. I think if he was playing, he'd be one that I'd be massively worried about because he's a bit of a live wire. You never know really what he's going to do. So I'll be worried about him. Callum Wilson, I think, is a fantastic striker. I think there was talk about Villa going for him in the summer as well, but he chose Newcastle. But they just don't play to his strengths at all. I think they lump the ball up to him, and that's not what he's trying to do. And he scored, you know, a decent amount of goals this year. So if you give him service, he'll score goals. But I just don't think he's got the right players around him. So if you can get service to Wilson, then yeah, 100% he's someone that I'd be worried about. But on the face of it, the last couple of games, famous last words, but I don't think there's an awful lot to worry about.
No, I think for once, every Newcastle fan will agree with Villa fans this week. It's something that we don't expect to go and get a result at all. I'm talking about Callum Wilson. I think he's got 8 goals this season compared to Ollie Watkins' 6. And you think, you know, because Ollie Watkins is an absolute player as well. There was talks of Newcastle going in for him. Had we not got Callum Wilson and it had been vice versa, we'd have been happy as well. But like you said, we just don't play to his strengths at all. We've got no wingers. Crossing the ball is terrible. And then you try and change it up and play the big man, little man with Andy Carroll, but then we still got no one that's capable of crossing the ball, which is absolutely frustrating. What do you expect from Dean Smith this week? And in terms of being able to expose Newcastle's weaknesses, how do you look to set up? What do you think the plan will be?
Because we've had the COVID outbreak, we don't know who's had COVID. So I was a little bit worried about our players going to miss out. We've seen that Newcastle players are missing out still to this day, so I was worried about that. But to be fair, it looked like a fairly, you know, standard 11 and bench yesterday, so I was quite pleased with that. And looking at the performance at Man City, there didn't seem to be too many after effects. I think towards the end of the game, players looked knackered, but at the end of the day, you're playing Man City, like that's fair enough. So yeah, we're playing Newcastle 3 or 4 days later, so there might be an element of tiredness there, but I don't think it'll be too dissimilar. I think the main thing that Newcastle fans will like to hear, that I don't think there's going to be any John McGinn because he picked up a yellow card against Man City, so that's him out for the game. In terms of what we're going to do, we loaned out Conor Hourihane the other day, so he's not going to come in. I think it might be Jacob Ramsey. So that's one sitting in midfield with Luiz, and then Barkley and Ramsey, who are both attacking midfielders there. So I think we'll go for it. I don't think there's any doubt about that, especially playing at home as well. I think, you know, we're going to go for it, and I think it's going to be quite difficult for Newcastle to sort of get out. But yeah, we'll take the game to Newcastle, and I think seeing what I've seen of Steve Bruce this season and when he was at Villa, I think he'll sit back and we know exactly how the game's sort of going to pan out. But I think we're going to go for it, and yeah, I'm looking forward to a decent attacking display from Villa.
Yeah, interesting. Last 15 games, 6 draws. Newcastle have won 6, Villa won 3. All of Villa's wins coming at Villa Park. And then across all competitions at Villa Park, Villa have won 37 games and lost 19, drawing 20 across the 76. You've scored 136 goals against Newcastle at home, only conceding 78. So it seems like it's all playing in your favour. Yeah. Other than Jack Grealish, mate, who's been your most influential player this year?
I'd probably go with Emi Martinez at the back. I don't think he's going to be too busy against Newcastle, so I don't think he's going to have a massive impact there. But in terms of this season as a whole, he's definitely kept us in a lot of games, made a couple of really good saves against Man City yesterday. Wolves away sticks on my mind as well, where we won 1-0 with a last-minute penalty. He kept us in that game 100%. So he's won us a lot of points this year. Ross Barkley, he wasn't too influential against Man City, but he's just got that quality, and he's been out for like a month anyway, so that's fair enough. It'll take him time to get back to fitness, but definitely definitely Barkley and Martinez are my two standouts. But you can say any of them, because Ollie Watkins as well has been great.
Yeah.
Yes, like you said, he hasn't scored as many as someone like Callum Wilson, but just his hold at play and just the little things that if you watch him for 90 minutes, you will appreciate it more than if you just go off the stats and things like that. So there's a lot of positives for Villa in terms of influential players as well as Jack Grealish. So it won't be a one-man team, like I said earlier, which is really good to see. And yeah, I think I'm really excited for the game based on the players that we've got.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not bashing Ollie Watkins. My point is that Callum Wilson's done that in a Newcastle side that have not been very good. So if had he gone to Villa, he could be looking at double figures. Do you know what I mean? With the style of play that you've got, as well. Anyone from the Newcastle side, regardless of form, that you would take into your starting 11?
Into the starting 11? Probably not into the starting 11. There's players that I'd take definitely to sort of fill out the squad, because I think that's been one of the things that, one of our weaknesses this season. We don't have the biggest squad in the world, and Dean Smith likes to, stick with that core 11, and there isn't too many opportunities for players to come off the bench and get into that side. So I'd definitely take Callum Wilson to rival Ollie Watkins, definitely. But apart from that, probably not. Like that's quite rare, I think, to see that for two teams that last year, well, Newcastle were better than Villa, so a year on, it's quite bad to see, but probably not, mate.
What is it, do you think, about Steve Bruce? He seems to, it's very similar to Alan Pardew. He can take over a side, do well for a season, and then once he's embedded, you drop off a cliff. What is it about him? Obviously, you've got his negative tactics, but is there anything else as a Villa fan that you can put your finger on as to the issues at the club when you had him?
I think it's just frustration. I think what rings a bell to me is when I think it was our season that we lost in the playoff final. He just tactically was just naive. Like, we were losing. I remember a game against Bolton, we were losing 1-0, and in the last minute he just chuck on 4 strikers, and it just seems like, well, that's the easy option. Like, where is the actual tactical nous to actually do something to break this Bolton side down? For example, he just throw on strikers and hope for the best. There's no real sort of plan there. So especially, I think if fans were in the ground, St James's Park would be so toxic.
Yeah.
I think he would have potentially gone by now, but I think there being no fans in the stadium, that's working in his favour. But especially for me, what rings a bell because I used to go every week and watch us under Steve Bruce, and it just every single week you're seeing the same things, and just nothing ever seems to work and ever change, and you're wondering, what do they actually do in training to sort of combat these problems that we're all seeing on the pitch, and we can all see what's going on, we can all see what's going wrong. So I can fully feel Newcastle fans' pain, because I can fully imagine how you're going at the moment. But I don't know, it's just something about him just falls off a cliff, like you said. If
you were Steve Bruce, if you were in charge of Newcastle, rather, coming up against a strong Villa side this weekend, what would you do to look? What sort of parts of Villa's game would you look to expose?
Oh, if you ask me this, maybe earlier on in the season, I'd say get down the wings with the fullbacks. But against Man City, Matty Targett was absolutely fantastic. Matty Cash as well. Both the fullbacks are absolutely class. So I think there's a lot of criticism has been on Tyrone Mings at centre half recently, with him making a couple of mistakes. We saw it a couple of times against Man City last night. So I think if you get Callum Wilson maybe on Tyrone Mings and make him panic, because he does like to play with his feet. He doesn't like to lump it forward all the time. He likes to get his head up and look for a pass. So if you can get Callum Wilson on him and pressuring him, you may cause him a problem. But yeah, I think Tyrone Mings is maybe one that you should look at as a weakness. But yeah, that's definitely maybe the only one. Midfield as well, like I said, with there being no John McGinn, it's going to be quite a forward attacking midfield. So if you can get bodies in there and play it around us, then you might have an option there. But yeah, those are the only sort of things I can think of.
In terms of the lineup, you mentioned it wouldn't be too dissimilar from the Manchester City lineup. Where I've watched, glimpses, and obviously when you've been on the telly, I've kept an eye. Where's Grealish kind of? Where's his main position been this year? Because obviously last year he was more of a central attacking midfielder. A lot went through the middle. It seems he's been playing a little bit out wide this year. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think the start of last year, especially, he was a number 10. He was in the middle. He's pulling the strings. But we moved him out to the left-hand side sort of halfway through last season. It worked really well with him and Matt Targett going down the left-hand side. And don't get me wrong, he doesn't stick to being left wing. Obviously, if you watch Jack Grealish, he's all over the place. But his main position is starting on the left-hand side, cutting in and dribbling past players on the wing. And that's carried on into this season. He started on the left wing until Ross Barkley, who was our number 10, got injured. So we didn't have too much cover in the midfield. We didn't have a player who was similar to Ross Barkley to come in. So Grealish came into that number 10 position, and we brought in another winger to go onto the left. But if everybody's fit, he will play on the left wing. And if you said that Jack Grealish was playing on the wing to me like a couple of years ago, I would have thought, well, why is he doing that? He's not going to influence the game. But it's just something that Dean Smith has done, and he's been really good with Jack Grealish, and it's worked with him playing on the left. So yeah, definitely on the left, but Jack Grealish, he'll flow and play wherever he wants. Basically, he's got free reins to do what he wants.
Do you expect to keep hold of him after this season?
Yeah, I think there's on Twitter, Man United fans especially saying it's his dream to move there, and it's just so frustrating because it's not. There's pictures of him in a Villa shirt when he's 5, 6, 7 years old. He's a Villa lad. He's from the area, so he signed a 5-year contract. I think that's what people sort of miss out on. He signed a 5-year contract in the summer, and he said in interviews himself that he's bought into the Villa sort of progress and where we're going. He's invested in our ambition, and he wants to stay here and be part of it. And people sort of talk about, what figure would you take from 80, 90 million? But to us, he's priceless, and I wouldn't change him for anyone in the Premier League. Yeah, you can say, surely you'd take De Bruyne, but no, I'd rather have Jack Grealish because he's our player. He's a Villa boy, so I'd rather keep him. So I fully expect him to be here. Maybe not for those 5 years, maybe, but I just don't know. But definitely for the next 2 or 3. It just depends on where Villa go, because we're flirting with the European places this year. Whether we can just about make that next year, I think he's going to buy into that, and he's playing in the England squad. I think that was definitely something that was big in his mind. He wanted to get into that England squad, and last year he couldn't quite do it. But when Villa are doing well, especially this year, he's gonna stay at Villa for the next 3, 4, 5 years. Who knows? But I don't expect him to go anytime soon.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough, mate. In terms, just a question I wanted to ask you as well. Carl Darlow, talking about England call-ups, do you think he deserves one?
I don't see why not. I think last year Aaron Ramsdale was talked about getting an England call-up. We see how far he's fallen off. I don't see why Carl Darlow can't get in. I think he's definitely, like Martinez, kept you in a lot of games this year, made some unbelievable saves. And he's definitely Newcastle's best player when I have watched them recently. So I don't see why not. He won't start for England. We all know Pickford's the main boy. Pope as well has been brilliant this year. So I don't see why he can't make that 3rd spot, maybe 4th spot. I think he'll definitely be up there if he keeps up this form, especially. I think he's been brilliant.
Definitely. Steve Bruce as well, mate. If he does stay, if Mike Ashley doesn't stupidly make any sort of decision, do you think Newcastle will get relegated?
I think there's a lot of dross down there this season. I think I think Sheffield United are gone. West Brom, they've looked okay in the last couple of games, but they've still got a long way to go. Fulham have looked okay recently. I definitely think you'll be flirting with it. When I remember I watched the Sheffield United game where you lost, and I checked the table, and I was quite surprised that you got to, I think it was 22 points at the time or something like that. I was quite surprised you got that many, judging on how poor Newcastle were. So if you keep this up and sides like Fulham and West Brom pick up, I don't see why you wouldn't get sucked into it. I don't think you'll go down eventually, but I definitely think you'll be flirting with relegation if this continues. Yeah,
it's been an absolute nightmare. I think it was 19 points from the first 17 games. I don't know if you saw the ridiculous VAR decision against Spurs, where we've got a penalty. It was, we got a lucky result there. Beat West Ham 3-0, first game of the season, did very well, but West Ham were poor and they've kicked on them really well. Got beat by Brentford's B team. We smashed Morecambe, but then we struggled against Newport County. Again, the Sheffield United game was shocking. We've done shocking against Fulham, West Brom. It's just been an absolute nightmare. But back to yourself, mate. Where do you realistically expect Villa to finish up, continuing this kind of vein of form? Because I think you've got, maybe 3 games in hand on the majority of the Premier League now?
Yeah, so we've played 16. I think the majority of the Premier League have played 18, 19. We've got 26 points at the moment. I think we sit in 11th. So if I had to put something, I'd say 8th or 9th for me. I don't think the European places, yes, they are realistic because we are in and around it, but I just think it's going to come slightly too soon. And for a side that came 17th last year, you can't really complain too much about that. So I think next year we'll definitely be going for the European places, but this year I'd more than happily take an 8th or 9th. I think that'll be unbelievable progression from the 17th place finish last year. But yeah, definitely I'd take top 10. Anywhere in the top 10, I'll be absolutely buzzing.
Cool. Final question about Newcastle. If you were a Newcastle fan and Bruce was to go, who do you think Newcastle fans should kind of expect to take on board, or who could make a significant difference in a short period of time?
I think you've gone down the dinosaur route. You've been there, done that, and obviously Sam Allardyce isn't free. But that wouldn't surprise me if Bruce did go and Allardyce was available. That honestly wouldn't surprise me. But I think Eddie Howe's a name that's done the rounds, isn't it? I think he did really well at Bournemouth, taking them. He progressed them from League Two to Premier League, did well there, but just went a little bit stale at Bournemouth eventually. So I think he'd be an option. He's been out of the game for a little while now, so it wouldn't surprise me to see Eddie Howe come in, but that would be far too sensible for Mike Ashley. I just don't see that happening at all.
Definitely not, mate. In terms of the game on Saturday, predictions?
On the face of it, 3-0 Villa, but yeah, you never know, do you? I think in the back, on the one hand, I'm saying 3-0 Villa will smash you, but Steve Bruce, scrappy 1-0 Villa win, but I don't think we'll concede. I think, if we hold out for 80 minutes against a Man City side, I think we'll be more than fine against Newcastle.
Yeah, I don't think we scored a goal in open play for something like 800 minutes, mate. So you haven't got to worry about that. It's ridiculous. Yeah. So, me personally, I think it could be 3 or 4. I really do. I just kind of hope, no disrespect to yourselves, that because I know a lot of Villa fans talk about it week in, week out, and you do feel affected by it. That maybe VAR comes into play. That's how desperate we've become. That is how desperate we've become. Final question before I let you go, mate. Sub on the Tyne, you relegate Newcastle. Were you there and were you involved?
I was not there. When was that? Was it 20? I can't remember.
I can't remember off the top of my head.
I wasn't there. Every single time we play Newcastle, you see all these pictures on Twitter of the banners and things like that, and the crying Newcastle fans and things like that. There has been a bit of a rivalry, hasn't there, over the last I don't know, 5-10 years. It's a bit bizarre. I don't know where it's come from. But it's all fun and games. So hopefully we do the job, and we'll see all those pictures of Sub on the Tyne again come up on Twitter tomorrow, on Saturday when we win. But we'll see.
Yeah, I think ironically, Steve Bruce is starting to bring the fan bases together, which is weird, but it is what it is. Yeah, really appreciate you coming on, Max. Anyone, because we've probably got mutual friends that we don't know about, but a lot of people will be watching this from my side around here. So if you're not already involved in Max and Villa on Tour, let them know where they can find you, mate.
Yeah, Villa on Tour on YouTube. I do live match reactions to games, discussing transfers, anything to do with Villa. If that takes your interest, subscribe to the channel, Villa on Tour on YouTube.
Perfect. Thank you very much again, mate. I won't say good luck for Saturday. We'll hopefully have a chat after, but enjoy the rest of your week, mate, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care, everyone. We'll see you on the weekend.